a comment my dad made, which I talk about in the book heavily, is he would always say when I would get out of a race, Michelle, was that the best you could do today? And every race, whether I won, whether I got dead last, whether I crushed a PR, whether I did terrible and it was like I was having an out of body, like Michelle doesn't exist today experience, my dad would always say, Michelle, was that the best you could do today? And that comment, I think, is honestly the framework of who Michelle now is. Because when I look at my normal day to day in business, was that the best I could do today? Meaning, did I do everything that I could have done today to have a successful day, or did I choose not to?
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Talking Shift Show. Wow, Talking Shift Show, Talking Shift with Craig. I think it's kind of fun to say Talking Shift Show. And I'm super excited, you guys. Welcome to this episode. I get my dear friend, Michelle Berman-Michael, to join us today. And I'm actually almost through with her new book, The Black Line. I was hoping to get it finished right before we launch today. I've got literally like 2 more chapters to go. And I'm really fired up to talk about this book, Michelle, and like your journey to get here, the message you're saying throughout the book, and what you have been doing with your audience and really, and I think from the progression of your career and life and where you're going right now, like I'm super thrilled that you're here and we're all better as a result of you here. And I'm excited for you to share that story. So welcome, Michelle. Welcome, Louie, who also is joining us on the podcast today. My dog, he's a little grumpy because I'm not talking to him right now. But anyway, let's get into it. Michelle, welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Craig. I've really been looking forward to this. I think it's always so fun to go on with people that you just truly, genuinely love and care about. And I think also it's special for me too, knowing that you've seen such a trajectory for me over the last year. By the time you're listening to this episode, if you're listening to us, we will have crested into the new year. And I think the beautiful thing about that is 2025 was one of those years where I'm excited to just slow down for a few minutes and just kind of take it all in. And I don't want to say pat myself on the back because that doesn't sound very humble of me, but I think it's just when you look back at your year, you're kind of like, holy shit, I did that. I had that was the year I had. And I think I just want to kind of soak in that.
Well, so it's a couple of things. Number one, good luck slowing down because the more I know you, I don't know if that's in your dinner. However, you do have a reason that's going to force you to slow down and perhaps, put your attention towards something else. So when is our due date? It's March
March 28th. We'll see.
March 20.
We'll see if he decides to come early or if he stays snug as a bug in a rug for the whole time. We'll see.
I love it. But you do bring up something really cool. And because it is this time of the year, one thing I always do around New Year's, and it's usually after, as we get into January, I always say to myself, wow, what a difference a year makes.
Mm-hmm.
And every year when I say that, it's like I couldn't see that coming. And I can't believe how much happened. And of course, I always want to say progress. And certainly, Michelle, knowing where you've been from last year at this time through 2025 to now, I really can say and echo that, I think in your statement, wow, what a difference a year makes.
Truly. It's been the year of a lifetime for me. And I think the thing, I was on a call earlier with a very dear mentor of mine and who and she said to me, she's like, can you just take a second and give yourself some grace for wanting to take a week off? And I was like, yes. But at the same time, she's been with me on the ride too. And
Yeah.
what last year looked like versus what this year looked like and doing, the end of year projection numbers and where were we last year and where do we want to be this year and looking through all of that, year over year, we were up almost 38%. And that is insane, right? Like when you think about it. And I think for me, just sitting in that and knowing that that is what I did in 2025 and with having a baby in 2026, I still think we'll have an even bigger year. And I think that is a true testament to my team and also just the legacy I'm trying to build. I think people are starting to pay attention. And at the end of the day, all we want is impact, right? That's what we're here for. And one person, one room at a time, we'll get there for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you are in a lot of rooms, but so you bring something up. You had 38% year over year growth. Why? what do you think contributes to that? Why do you have 38% growth?
I know exactly why, Craig, and so do you. And I think you know me well enough to know the answer, but I'll share it with people. You know, in 2024, we had a good year overall, despite the mortgage and real estate space, which is my primary marketplace. You know, we do have some clients outside of that, and especially this year, we've grown outside of just mortgage and real estate. In 2024, I had a year where I didn't have all of the right people on the bus. There were some morally and ethically wrong individuals that were in my organization. I had really good systems as far as how we organized and handled clients and all of that. But the one thing that was missing was the daily black line strategy. And the daily strategy existed in my brain. And it was how I had built my company over the last almost 9 years leading up to, or 10 years leading up to that point. But unfortunately, I had a very severe miscarriage in October of last year, October of 2024, I should say. And it forced me on my knees, quite literally and figuratively. And what happened was I ended up ultimately making a decision that instead of telling everybody else what to do and doing it occasionally, I was going to do it every single day without fail, to the point where my friends like you would hear from me and I'd be like, "Hey, did you send your message today?" Like, I was annoying about it. And I think what happened there is I made that commitment to myself and I said, it's one thing to teach other people to do it and to know you're good at it, but it's another thing to say, my back is up against the wall. And if I don't do it, my bills don't get paid. So let me show the world that I can. And in the process, we had so many amazing things happen, right? But the drivers and levers assignment, which is single handedly the most successful part of my program, was born. And honestly, that was born out of like my relationship with you and James Duncan and Cindy Ertman and a lot of these really amazing people because I was mentoring you guys. And I'm like, hold on, I need to turn that into a homework assignment. And then everything was born sort of out of that. In 2025, I don't think that there has gone a day, even on the weekend, that I either haven't thought about who I was prospecting or I haven't actually sent the prospecting message. So when you look at 2024 and you year over year compare it from 2024 to 2025, how many outbound prospecting messages did I send? How strategic was I about it? And what did I do in 2025? And that alone is the common denominator that answers the question.
Well, and there's so many really critical things that you said in that, and I think there's the tactical side, and then there's the momentum building side, even outside, following the black line, and we're gonna dig into the black line and the social media prospecting, and really what I love hearing too, because I think so much, especially being in this space, but anybody, like I always say, like when I'm speaking or coaching, I'm not only the president, I'm also a member. And so much of what my content or my frameworks, or right now I'm leading a lot of strategic planning events. I'm doing my business blueprint frameworks. These are things beyond just the coaching relationship. And I was talking to someone actually this morning, and she was asking, like, how did you come up with that framework? I said, honestly, it came up off the cuffs with the client, helping them lead towards something and not doing these old traditional business plans that don't work anyway. And
Mm.
because it's all practical use. And so then I do it for myself. Hey, not only, is this good for you, it's good for me. And I think this is why I resonate with what you're saying, because then we're also helping others authentically, right? We can
Mhm.
take our own medicine. This is coming from practical use. You are following your black line. And so that allows you to effectively and authentically help and coach, other people. And I think that's where the momentum internally generates. It's a belief system. And then, of course, then now applying tactically, okay, shit, this thing works.
Mhm.
Now we're driving results. And so I love, what you're saying. So let's dig in because you wrote just a killer book. And Michelle, I want to say too, like what I love about your book and it's like the juxtaposition between your life, your experiences, the growth of your business, and then your business philosophies, the black line, beyond the method, and the way you layer that together. It's a really well written book, Michelle. Aside from the fact that it has a really important core message, it's well written. And so, just want to say, kudos to you. And I think everybody's listening. And by the way, everybody, if you're special, in sales, but not just sales, leadership, management,
Mhm.
you need a social presence. And this simplifies and I think takes the pressure down. It's almost like it gives you permission. This is just what you need to do. I would say like the through line, you say the black line, follow the
Mhm.
black line. And so everybody listening, this is a book to read. Tell me a little bit like why the black line? Why not the blue line? Why not the green line?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thank you. We took so much time to write that and so much just prayer, honestly, and just quiet time and really like where did I want this to go? What was the impact that I needed it to make? And actually, in the midst of the miscarriage in 2024, I rewrote the table of contents. So we had already submitted the table of contents prior to
Mm.
that. And in the middle of it, I was like, I remember calling Steve, my copywriter, and I just said, nope, we have to edit that. And to your point, because I had to feel it in my bones, right? And to put something into a print that you're going to put your name behind and you're going to ask people to support, you better believe in it and you better like feel it so deeply. And that's what I hope, right? Is that when you read it, my number one favorite compliment that I've gotten now multiple times was people said that when they were reading it, they could actually hear me talking. Right? They're like, oh, I can literally hear Michelle saying that because I want that to come through. I want my personality and my sarcasm and my high D personality, sort of sassy, to come through. But at the same time, like I really deeply mean what I say and truly believe in it. So the black line, why the black line? Why not the blue line to your point? Which also for anybody watching, Craig and I, if you can see our branding colors, you can tell we might be friends, right? But the reality of it is the black line is a play off of the black line on the bottom of a pool. And it was born out of the idea of, or sort of from the ashes, if you will, of a 20 plus year swimming career. I swam competitively all through elementary school all the way through college. I started competitively swimming at 5, meaning I was racing on the weekends, swim meets on the weekends. Your daughter plays volleyball at a very high level, so you know what the grind looks like there. But I started at 5. By 13, I was swimming the mile as my signature event,
Wow.
which is the earliest you're allowed to swim it based off of age groups and brackets, especially for females. The amount of women that are swimming an event like that is significantly lower than men, even still today. It's changing, right? It's shifting, to no pun intended to your podcast name, but it is shifting. But the point is at 13 years old, I was averaging anywhere between 10 and 11,000 yards slash meters a day, depending on what season it was of the year, which means I was swimming on average 6 miles per day, 6 days
Wow.
a week. So when you do that math, right, the difference between me and a sprinter is so just ungodly wide. It's like the Grand Canyon divide between the two.
Well, I remember you talking
And
about too in your book, like you're in the
yeah,
pool, first one in, last one out.
last one out
And I
every
really
time.
picked up on that, and I mean, there's work ethic within that, there's grind, there's muscle, but there's momentum. There has to be more. You can't just grind your way through, you'll grind out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like? I mean, what was that internal fire to keep you first in, last out when you see the sprinters sort of hit it and then they're out and it's like there's like glory over there, but I'm the one burning the calories over here.
You know what it is? At 35 years old, I feel like I've finally come to this realization of, who is Michelle? Like, who really am I? And, my younger life, I was always bullied, almost always picked on, really never invited and not part of really any group or crew. Wasn't the girl that the boys wanted to take to prom. Like I went to prom my senior year with my girlfriend. I didn't go with a boy. I didn't have my first boyfriend until I was a freshman in college. And, so for me, I had this sort of burning internal fire in a way of like, is anybody going to ever notice me? Or am
Mm.
I just going to live this whole life this way? And so I was kind of always fighting for the attention aspect of it. But now that I've gotten to this place at 35, my husband and I joke like we don't ever want to go anywhere all the time. On the weekends we were literally talking about this in the car on the way home from the grocery store the other day. We're like, I'm so glad there's nothing on my calendar this weekend because all I want to do is just sit in the house and chill and do nothing. Right. So it's funny how at a young age you think I want that, right? I want to be the center of everybody's world. But then when you actually are an adult and you have kids, you're like, please, nothing on my calendar for the love of
So
God,
true.
right?
Totally.
But to get back to it, one of the things with the black line for me is I'm a big analogy person. I'm a big symbolism person. And I think for the 20 plus years of staring at that line, it's
Mm.
reminiscent of so many things. And most importantly, the black line itself taught me discipline long before I ever even knew what the word itself meant. Because, I mean, how many people actually know what the word discipline is at 13 years old? Like, you don't, right? You just assume that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But a comment my dad made, which I talk about in the book heavily, is he would always say when I would get out of a race, Michelle, was that the best you could do today? And every race, whether I won, whether I got dead last, whether I crushed a PR, whether I did terrible and it was like I was having an out of body, like Michelle doesn't exist today experience, my dad would always say, Michelle, was that the best you could do today? And that comment, I think, is honestly the framework of who Michelle now is today. Because when I look at my normal day to day in business, was that the best I could do today? Meaning, did I do everything that I could have done today to have a successful day, or did I choose not to? And I think that mindset is what I want people to take from the book, right? Which is nobody's going to go build our worlds for us. And in sales and entrepreneurship, we start every single month in the red. You and I both know this better than anybody, right? When as younger entrepreneurs, when you look at the start of your month, every single month, you are in the red or in the black, however you want to phrase it. But I always say red, which means that every month we start the month and we have to go find money in order to be positive for the month. And to me, that's always been a driver, right? Of like, okay, I'm 7,000 in the red. How do I go from 7,000 in the red to 7,000 in the green? Where do I find $14,000? And so for me, the discipline aspect of it became the driving force. But the reality was I was fighting for something so much bigger than really who I initially had been. But the core principle, and I want to tangent us back or divert us back from the tangent, but the core principle is really this. I think most people go their entire lives waiting for motivation to just like lightning strike them,
Mhm.
right? Like some lightning bolt is just going to finally give them the courage to move or go do something. But for me, motivation never came first. Discipline did, meaning because I already had it, even though I didn't know it, right? So the motivation to go do it didn't happen. The discipline of I've already done it is what kept me going. And long before I ever became an entrepreneur or a coach, a speaker, or in this case, a mom and a leader of a company, it started at the bottom of a pool,
Mm.
staring at a very simple black line for hours and hours and hours of the day. And that line wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. It never moved. It gave me direction. It kept me honest, which is important. I think all of us in business need to know like who's keeping us honest. Is there something or someone? And the main principle I want to hit home to at the end of this is that it was the anchor when my mind wanted to drift away to other things, which I think is the guiding principle of the black line, because it's not just teaching me or wasn't just teaching me how to swim laps, right? It was literally teaching me how to live my life. And I think we live in a world, especially 2026 now, right? We live in a digital age of AI is everywhere. Everybody's using it. And we also live in a very shiny object syndrome environment where everybody's doing a million different things. I mean, you and I could sit in a room and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then we have this like natural comparison of, I'm not doing that. Well, I'm doing that. I'm not doing that. Right. So it's like this, you feel like you have to keep up with the person next to you. When in reality, I don't need to be doing what you're doing. And you don't necessarily need to be doing what I'm doing, but we have to do what is working for us. Um, and not being distracted by the shiny object syndrome of so and so's doing that. So does that mean I have to? Right? Hey, so and so is doing that. Does that mean I have to do that now because he seems like he's successful? So I want to be. So the swimming analogy is if you are swimming down the pool and you pick your head up and you look at the person next to you, what does that do? Does that help you speed up or does that help you ultimately make you slow down? Right. So I could go
Throws
on
you
and
off your
on, but
game.
that's the core piece of all of it.
Well, and so again, you touch on something I think to tie this, motivation, for example, and I talk often that look, motivation feels good. However, motivation does not last. Motivation is an emotion. It's a feeling. It's fleeting. That's why, and we have to turn discipline into momentum. And
Yep.
so, and the thing I love about the black line analogy too, and in my sort of, when I talk about leadership, for example, I always say, look, as a leader, often you see Louis in the background right here. Oftentimes, we think leadership that as a leader, I'm the compass. And that's not true. As a leader, you're not the compass. As a leader, you're the magnet to other people's compasses. And so when I think about that from a leadership standpoint, I like that with the black line concept too, because it simplifies things. It puts things into focus. Stay with my black line. And I would probably say, look, the black line can shift. The black line can have some elasticity to it, depending on what's going on. But there is a black line to stay the course with. And when we do drift or when we do have course correction, this is the black line to stay and follow and guide. And I think it simplifies. Like
Yep.
what I love about that is because when things get, things can get very complicated very fast. Things can get very overwhelming very fast. Your black line, and everybody has their own black line, but your black line is that gravitational pull, or that, the ability to magnetize yourself back to center and keep going. And something else you said too that I do want to point out. You talk about your, in fact, I have this in your book, actually, in almost like right out of the gate, identity.
Mm.
You said as you found yourself. So that's actually page 11. I had built my identity in the pool. Now,
Yep.
this is really, really important. And again, I see people drifting away, or they're not sure of who they are. And as I think about, and part of my focus going into, and my mission for 2026 is to help people lock into your genius zone. And your identity, it's one out of three. Your identity is the very first thing for you to be locked into your genius zone. And that's where I see, and now you and I have only known each other a short while, but I feel like I've known you for a long time.
Forever. Yeah.
Right. We have that kindred spirit. We have a shared and common belief system. We see each other's work ethic. I've seen and how you've impacted me and helped and mentored me in trying to, especially when I was sort of drifting a little bit, the black line. Right. And
Mm.
so I love how you center that down, and bring that down. Now, so let's take that a little bit further. So your focus with your clients is helping. It's not social, and I love the car. It's not social media. It's not the vanity of social media. And you talk a lot about that in the book. And it's
Yeah.
so true. And I am very much a victim of, I want the dopamine response. Did anyone like my post? Does anyone like me? I'm gonna check the thing they sent, and like, I mean, it's so stupid. I hate it, but yet I'm still looking, But that's not the goal.
Mm-mm.
So beyond the
Mm-mm.
method and following the black line is you're taking social media and truly helping people with prospecting in social media. So talk a little bit about where your black line has taken you, and
Yep.
and how you're helping people
Well,
really.
I love that question. Thank you. And, I think, how long have we known each other now? I don't know, 6, 7 months, something like that. But I feel like it's 6, 7. Oh my God,
I couldn't help it.
My stupid 4-year-old loves to say that too. Gross. But it feels like it's been 10 years, honestly.
Yeah.
And, you're the person. I remember when I first found out I was pregnant with this baby, and I think I called you and
You did.
FaceTimed you, and I'm like, holy shit, right? Like, this is actually happening. And that's the relationship that,
Yeah.
we have. And I think that's a direct reflection of, we're on the same path. We have the same goals, and we also have the same moral and ethical compass of how do we want to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it. But, the black line methodology that is built within the framework of Beyond the Method is rooted in one very, very simple thing. And I was on a very important call with a high level C-suite executive the other day, and I said this, and he pulled it out of his drawer. And so this will make sense in a second, but he legit pulled it out of his drawer. But what the black line method, or Beyond the Method methodology, is, where the black line is woven through that, is sending one message every single day without fail to somebody that you do not know, with the intention of using leverage to create an opportunity that's booked on your calendar.
I
So
say that
this
one more
is,
time, because
I
the
know I
leverage
said it
piece is
super
so critical.
fast.
Say that again for everybody to listen to.
Yeah. So Beyond the Method teaches you, to simplify it, right, is to send one message every single day to somebody that you do not know, with the intention of getting a booked call or opportunity scheduled on your calendar. But we're going to do it using leverage, which is, in simple terms, your ability to build a bridge between someone you have a relationship with to get to somebody that you don't. Right. And you and I have had multiple examples of that. But the gentleman I met with, I said to him, I was like, this is not the easy button from the Staples commercial. It sounds really, really like, oh, well, just send a message. It's not, right? Because in theory, you can do it very wrong. And you and I have seen this,
Yeah.
and we still see it every day. How many of us listening to this get messages on LinkedIn or Instagram where we're like, yep, that for sure was not for me and not meant for me. And you can tell on the receiving end that that wasn't specifically for you, and it feels slimy and sort of gross. And we don't want to be that. Right. So the
Especially with the rise of
methodology is
AI.
sound. Oh my God. Don't even get me started on the data there. Right. Because the data is staggering around this.
Mhm.
Something like 52% of people can still fully delineate between, is that written by AI or is that a human? And 67% of people say that their willingness to work with a brand goes down if they know that that response was done by AI. So, what does that tell us? That tells us that relationship based businesses, this is a major issue. I would say it's the COVID of prospecting, right? Of like, this is an issue because if you want to win on social by creating revenue for yourself, whether you're in sales, whether you're an entrepreneur of any kind, or whether you're in the mortgage industry listening to this, because Craig and I happen to originate in the mortgage industry, the principle is the same, right? Like if you're sending a message to someone and they can tell that that wasn't from you, they will likely not respond to you.
And not even that time, but every time.
Every time. And when I get on a call with someone and they say, I ask them sometimes, especially if it's a newer relationship and the call went really well, I'll just straight up ask, like, just out of curiosity, what made you actually respond to my message of all the messages you get? And because typically we have talked about, like, this is what Michelle teaches and all of that prior to that point of the conversation. So we reach this inflection point of like, hey, do you want to answer? Why did you respond to me? And they say right out of the gate, like, we could tell that you took your time to actually know what you were asking for. And it stood out from the white noise. So, page 132 and 133 of the book, which I'm not sure if you've read that chapter yet, Craig, but that is the 4-part framework of an outbound prospecting message. And it is very intentional and it is very, very systematic and can be done in every message. The beyond the method overall, right? We have to fix your content for most people. That is typically an issue that we have to overcome before we can talk about prospecting. Once we fix the content problem, we then shift into the prospecting world, which is my superpower and my bread and butter. And the subtitle of the book, Turning Your Lane into Your Superpower, which is my prospecting methodology, has helped me go from maybe $80,000 a year business in year one to well over $1 million in year 11. And that trajectory, when you look at that, you're like, yeah, it makes sense for the trajectory of a business, but how?
Yeah.
Right. And it's solely from one message every day to somebody that I didn't know to get to the next one, to get to the next one, to get to the next one. And in that, I'm building genuine relationships. And as I build the relationship, I mean, I know if you knew somebody that I didn't know, I could call you right now and say, hey, how do you know that guy? And can I use your name? And you would say, yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And that's how that next relationship gets born. But the discipline of sending one daily message every single day, most people are like, that's just a little too simple. Like, am I missing something? Like, what is there something more to it? And I'm like, there's really not.
Well,
It's
simple's
one
gonna
message.
win. That's right.
It's one message, that's it, and can you over prospect? Can you do too much? Maybe, but I also think it's a matter of, you look at your calendar and what is your calendar telling you? Is your calendar super booked and super full, and do you start the month with a bunch of opportunity calls with people you didn't know? Or is your calendar empty? And that'll tell you what you need to pay attention to, but I'm also in a phase of life right now where I'm not willing to slow down the
Yeah.
prospecting, even though my calendar is bonkers, especially going into having a baby. People are like, "Are you gonna chill out?" And no, right? Because I'm taking April and May off to stare at my newborn, but the calendar doesn't, like, the P&L doesn't get built by itself, right? Payroll doesn't pay itself. And as the revenue generator of a company, we have an obligation to our people to
That's
to
right.
keep showing up.
That's the joy, yeah, the joys of entrepreneurship. But I tell you, and being an entrepreneur, and it doesn't matter what you do if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and an entrepreneurial mindset. And again, learning from you, Michelle, as that entrepreneur. I mean, there's that internal drive that is always going to keep fueled. And you brought up the calendar, and I kind of like perked up for a second because when you and I, we were texting back and forth about the black line, and here's who I processed, and I got this call, and you got this call, and I got this appointment, and so I mean, I base my calendar, and if everyone's listening, I color code everything.
Oh, absolutely.
All my huddles are colored orange. All my podcasts are colored green. All my prospects are colored a different shade of green. All, this corporate client is purple. This corporate client, So when I look at the macro view of my calendar every week, I better see those prospect colors multiple times throughout the week, ideally every day. And so that color, if I'm missing that color, my whole purpose in life is to get that color back on my calendar, i.e., following the black line, if I tie that back down. So I mean, again, you're simplifying what otherwise feels like an overwhelming process of, I want to grow my business on social media. And the first thing is, let's take that down a notch. It's social presence, right?
Mm.
You talk about content because so many people can't get over the hump of stop having corporate marketing post
Oh, but
content for you. It's awful. It's white noise. Nobody cares. And society is shifting. In fact, this is better for everybody listening. It's in our favor because your audience, they don't give a shit. They don't care about the Thanksgiving postcard, although some people kind of like it, but they don't want the flyers. They don't want the corporate stuff. They don't care that you have a DSCR loan. It cracks me up when I see loan officers posting that they have a DSCR loan. Nobody even understands what that means. The only people seeing that, by the way, when you're posting on LinkedIn, you're just posting to other loan officers. But here's what they do care about: how do you solve their problem? So if you have a DSCR loan, who gives a shit? How do you use that to solve a problem for a client who perhaps wants to start? They have a good CPA and they're self employed and they want to have investment properties. You're not talking about that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And so it's easier for people to get over the hump. I was just working with a client over the weekend in one of my strategic planning events and really getting his social presence built up.
Mm.
Be authentic. It can be messy. You don't have to edit it. It doesn't have to go through corporate. Just connect to your ideal audience. By the way, do you know who they are? And how do you solve their problems and ease their pain? Just talk about that stuff. And that's where we start building your presence. And now, as we start moving towards prospecting and connecting, and I'm learning this from you, Michelle. Now, when people also come and check me out, they're going to see my storefront of content of like, I know who Craig is. I see that he, loves his wife and his daughter and they go play volleyball, but I also see he's very serious about the content he puts out. And I see that he did some
Yeah.
speaking and I see he did this strategic planning event. And I see that he's kind of a dork posting about, dressing his dog up for Christmas, which
With your glasses getting foggy, that was a hilarious video.
by the way, that's funny you say that. I actually left that in there on purpose. I'm like, that looks kind of weird. My glasses fogging up. I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to post it. And I'm wondering if
Yep.
anyone's going to notice it. And that was the comments I got like, man, your glasses are fogging up. So
Yeah.
it's okay. So that's what I love. Again, I'm going to go back to taking the pressure down and giving permission just to go out and connect with your audience.
Well, I think it just challenges the modern obsession with algorithms, right? I think the concept of the black line when I initially came up with the idea in my mind was like, that shit sucks. Like,
Yeah.
and I say it from that perspective, right? Of like waking up every morning and constantly scrolling. How good is my post doing? Man, I put so much time and energy into that, and look how well it did or not did, right? And you like attach yourself to this metric that doesn't actually put any money in our bank account.
In fact, it's
So,
draining one of our currencies, right? Like that's draining
yeah,
your energy. It's
every
draining your
time.
time.
Now, when you get the one quick dopamine hit of one that goes off and goes crazy, you feel good. And so you want to do another one, but then you do another one and it does shitty. And you're like, do I suck? Or did my content just suck? Or like, you start having all these weird thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea and maybe why the black line is so novel, if you will, which is an interesting way of kind of thinking about it, is it just challenges that modern obsession with chasing the algorithm and dopamine,
Yeah.
which is the algorithm, right? Or the virality aspect, or even to be
That's right.
frank, I mean, or to challenge the desire for external validation as that being the path that is going to make us successful, right?
Right.
And
That's
to
right.
use your word shift, which I love, it shifts us or shifts the focus back to the root of how we truly build a thriving business and a thriving life with our families and with our employees and with like our P&L, right? We have a relationship with our P&L, I would say anxiety or I'm not anxious, right? One or the other.
Yeah. Right.
But it shifts the focus back to the roots of how we really build that, which is movement, right? Discipline and human connection. Those are really the three things. Movement, meaning, do I do something every day that's going to help me build my business? Discipline of, if I don't want to, do I do it anyway? And human connection, which is, am I putting myself in a position to be with others that are doing what I'm trying to do or can make me think differently about what I'm trying to do? And when I'm in a room, like, when we were at the most recent conference together and I'm in that room thinking, who's in here that I don't know that I need to know, right? Like, who's in here that I can go have coffee with or go build a relationship with that is going to be a bridge someday, right? And you don't look at it from a transaction, you look at it from a genuine, like I just want to meet somebody new, right? And I know that if I do that, that meets somebody new, even if I'm not feeling social today, is the discipline I have to have that creates the movement that I need to have in order to have a happy business, right?
Well,
So
let's
it's
let's
all
touch on
correlated.
that, and let's touch on that for a second because the relationship value. And by the way, I get it. We all think relationally. but a lot of us act transactionally. And I think that's a common thread with, originators and salespeople. We think relationally, but we sort of act transactionally. And when we really understand that relationship value, and by the way, nobody works a conference room better than Michelle. I give you those props. No, you own that room. You're talking to everybody. But the relationship value I'm getting at, it's just more fun that way. I mean, that
Mhm.
was one thing as I built my career, as an executive, in the mortgage space and, from sales to management, into leadership. And there was times I did not guard my village. And as I matured and got more advanced into my career, then I really started locking down my village. I really started, and it wasn't people that just, it wasn't about agreement. It was about more like alignment. We can
Yeah.
disagree, but I don't want to fight over this. And I want to make sure that we have the right baseline of beliefs and core values. It's a let's take our jobs seriously, but not ourselves seriously type of thing. And I
Mhm.
tell you, as I grew that village, and that was really the through line for me, or maybe like I'll say my black line that goes into my identity. That after I lost my job, 6 weeks after I finished cancer treatment and fighting stage 3, like all that bullshit, like what is going on? And on page 1, Michelle, right? Like God gives you messages to give you messages. By the
Yep.
way, I love that. And so does my wife. I say that, oh, Michelle said that to me. And so she now says that. There
All
you go.
good. Yeah, God gives you a mess to give you a message.
Yeah. And I was knocked down. I was knocked really down into a valley. What helped get me up was I really had to pull back and say, who am I? Like that identity statement is who am I? And what got
Yep.
me back up was I am a leader. I am a leader and I'm going to lead my way out of this. And I'm going to now reinvent myself to start this business, with coaching and consulting and the speaking and the podcasting and all the stuff. But my black line in my business is leadership. Think of myself as a leader's leader. And that gives me confidence. That keeps me grounded. I can go into any room, work with any executive or any team, and I am absolutely confident that I contribute leadership value to help them move towards where they want to go. And that grounding, that identity, that black line,
Well, I would push you more if I may, because
push.
the black line isn't an idea, right? And it's not necessarily a thing. It's an action,
Mhm.
right? So you said leadership was your black line. That's not your black line. That's the outcome of your black line, right? So your black line is the single daily discipline, the single daily act that must be taken in order for you to execute your love of leadership skills or leadership development,
There you
right?
go.
So that's something I want people to really, really understand is the black line itself is so granular. And I think I'm trying to make sure I say this like properly because I really want to have the audience sort of commit to that, right? The black line specifically is one small intentional action that must be taken every day. Mine is one message every day for 365 days of the year. And that is a single repeatable discipline that will change the entire trajectory of my business. And as we talked about at the very beginning of the show, 38% year over year because I went from maybe 100 days out of the year where I was doing that to 2025. It was probably by the end of this year, I would say 360 out of 365 days, I did not miss sending one message, right? That's the difference in year over year. So I want you to go back to that for yourself, right? And say, so your black line isn't leadership. The impact you're making, the result that you get when you do the one daily act is you get to teach people how to be better leaders. So what is your one daily act?
Yeah, well, and so then and I thank you for the clarity, right? So I'll reframe it because the point I was making is I'll go back to what I would say is like that's the magnet to my compass. So that maybe kept me aligned. The black line is the actions that have to happen every day to then execute the success you're trying to drive. Is that a fair
It's to give
correction?
you the black line is the thing, the daily act that you
Right.
must do in order to give yourself the opportunity to do what you just said you want to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you want to go coach more people, you want to make an impact in a leadership role for an organization as a fractional or a business planning development coach or even just a personal business coach, right? You have to do something in order to give yourself that opportunity. What is that thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, that creates the right disciplines, that creates the right momentum, that simplifies where we're going. and then now
Yep.
point and go. And so that's, I mean, again, that's why I love, and I think I'm taking more of the spirit of that. And then now let's take into the tactical action, disciplined, side of that. Right. And certainly swimming, many, many miles in a pool. I totally get that. Now, I was a swimmer when I was a kid. I did have to say though, I have swam the Trans Tahoe relay race twice. So a team of 6 of us swam across Lake Tahoe, and the first leg for each of us was 2 miles. So I respect that mile swim. That was a lot. So no black line, just more very deep, dark blue, though. I will say that.
I mean, where you can't really see what's beneath
I
you.
know
But yeah,
it's a little creepy. I will say in the middle of the
a
lake.
little creepy. I
Oh yeah.
agree.
So Michelle, you've written the book. It's really an incredible book. You're on stages. You've grown your business 38%. I mean, you know, you got a baby coming. And honestly, it's like, I was gonna say, like, you're on fire, but that's not really what I'm trying to say. You're in momentum. Like you're just continually growing and building, and there's no doubt where you're going. But here's my question. What is next? Where are you driving towards next?
Yeah, such a good question and such a moment for reflection, right? And I think everybody has a word usually for their year, and my word for 2026 is boundaries. And
Mm.
I'll explain in multiple facets here. So boundaries from a personal perspective is, taking April and May off to have a baby is something that I was not able to do in 2021 when I had my son Knox. I was selling in the hospital after having a C-section. Like literally my phone was on my belly while my kid was asleep next to me. And we do what we have to do. And I think back then that was the right thing. I had no choice. I had to do that. But you meet my son and you realize like I'm still and always chose mom over anything else. But at the end of the day, like I had to make money to feed my family. So in 2026, the boundary is I'm not working in April and May. Like I'll return emails and I'll get on a podcast here or there, but I'm not working formally. I don't want my calendar to be full. I really just want to stare at my newborn baby in my lap for 2 months. Right. That's what I want to do. And I have a whole TBR list of books I want to read on maternity leave, but on the flip side, professionally, boundaries for me is an important word because I've done, back when I started speaking in 2021, I did a lot of free speaking. I did a lot of I'll come and I'll do this just because I want to get my name out there. I'll do this for free just because I want to get my name out there. And, 2025 was a year of resume building and earned reputation for being somebody who can deliver a really good keynote. Yes, I got paid in 2025, but in 2026, I've made the commitment that, if somebody can't pay me to be there, answer's no, right? Because I'm not going to leave my family to be somewhere if someone's not going to see the value in what I can deliver and provide. So boundaries for me professionally is I am at a place in my career where I do get to say no. Do I like saying no? Does it feel good to say no? No. But you also have to respect, where you've been and how far you've come. And as far as what's specifically next for me, aside from having my second baby in March, I'm actively right now today in the process of landing my first TED Talk. And I'm very, very excited about that. And I think it kind of happened by accident. One of those God things where like it was just I was in the right room at the right time and it was presented to me in a way that was very hard to say no to because I do believe that I have a message that's far outside of the mortgage and real estate space exclusively, and instead really needs to be in every entrepreneurial or sales organization across the world. And so I'll laughingly say this because I think you'll laugh with me about the funniness of this, but I earned companion status this year. So in 2026, my husband gets to travel with me to most of our events, which I love because I do want you guys like Craig, I want you to meet my husband, and I want Eric Levin to meet my husband, and I want these people to know that there is a person behind my life. And also, I'll be traveling with my son. He'll come with us, and I'll be nursing as long as I can. And I don't want my career to stop, but at the same time, I don't want to do it without my family. And so I think boundaries and knowing that my next, 2 to 3 years is really focused around speaking and the book. And I think there's an iteration number 2 in me, but I have had several people ask, when is the next one? A lot of people are like book and then book and then book, and it's like back to back to back. And I just want to kind of marinate on it, honestly, and let it grow its legs over the next couple of years. But I do believe wholeheartedly there's a second iteration that will come out, 27, 28, somewhere in there. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now I want to land the TEDx and I want to get on that stage and add it to the resume and have the biggest year of my career in 2026 despite having a baby, because what kind of a what better testimony than that, right?
First of all, I have no doubt that's gonna happen, and I love it's so funny because, you're it's like, I'm just trying to follow in your footsteps, right? I mean, I got the podcast launch now. I've got a book on my roadmap as well. Doing a TED Talk is in my bucket list as well, so I'm just gonna let you keep carving out, the track, and then I'm gonna benefit off you, off all of your learnings and everything, but
Ride the coattails.
I'm gonna ride
I'll
the
carry
coattails
you.
as well. I absolutely love, your trajectory and the path that you're on, and it really is, you're driving impact by example, right? And that's what I love. It's not by theory. It's not by I read it in a book somewhere. It's by example, and I think that's what I certainly resonate with, and I think that's certainly what your audience resonates with. And you made this easier because the very last question, as we sort of wrap this up, you've already answered. If you're in the audience and you're listening to this, what's the one word you want them to remember
Mm.
coming out of this conversation? And it could be different than how you answered it, but what's your one
Yeah,
word?
I mean, my word for 2026 is boundaries, but I think if you're listening to this and you take a word out of the episode, I think discipline by definition, I want them to understand, right? Because you've heard me say this, and it's one of my sort of most quoted sayings, which is that discipline is not a noun, it is a verb. And discipline is something that we must do, not something that we just think about, right? So it's not a noun in the form of a person, place, or thing. It is a verb, meaning it is something that is an action must be behind in or a some form of movement must happen in order for it to be considered a verb, right? Meaning swimming, for example, swim or to swim, that is a person, place, or thing. That's a noun, right? Whereas swimming is the verb version of the thing, right? So if prospecting is something you want to be better at 2026, and prospecting by itself, the word prospecting is an action, but at the same time, in theory, it's a noun because it's a thing that we must do, right? As opposed to the action aspect of prospecting is the doing part. So I just want people to, take the word discipline and really dissect that word. What does it mean for you? What have you done in 2025 that you can't do in 2026? And I always say failure is not a bad thing. Failure is feedback, and how do we use it to redirect? And I think if you looked at 2025 and you said, I had some really big wins, but then I had a couple of weird losses. Why? What's the saying? I'm gonna mess this up, but like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting nothing to change
Yep.
or something to change, right?
Good enough.
We don't want that. I don't want that for any of you guys. I want 2026 to be better than 2025. So, again, I think it all comes down to the root word of discipline being a verb, not a noun, ultimately.
Love it. And maybe I could add one more word that you've said a couple times that I really love, which is movement.
Yes,
Movement. I love that. Boundaries, discipline, movement, identity, black line. So yeah, what a great conversation, Michelle. Thanks for coming on Talking Shift.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. We could
Yeah, my
probably talk
pleasure.
forever, but we won't.
We could keep going. I know that. I know, but we're going to be on this many more times, and I think hopefully you're going to bring your new son along with you
I
on
sure
our
will. He'll
conversation.
be
Yeah,
here
yeah.
with me on the next
Right
one.
on. All right. Michelle, I appreciate it. Happy holidays to you. Happy New
You as well.
Year. And I'm super excited about the year to come for you, for your family, for all of us. So thanks for joining
Absolutely.
us. All right.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I
My
appreciate you.
pleasure. All right. I appreciate you. All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us with Talking Shift. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow, and all the other good stuff. So, all right. Cheers.